Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. We've got attendees joining us. We're up to about 62 right now, so we'll give it another minute or so before we get started. All right, we are right at 5 o'clock and we're up to about 85 participants. So we'll get started here in about another 20 seconds. While you wait, you can see what our agenda is for today. And we have 15 minutes for our presentation today and then about 15 minutes Q&A. We're going to ask that you save your questions until the end for two reasons. One, we might be answering, hopefully we're answering most of your questions as we go through the presentation. And two, it helps us filter at the end as we're trying to get through questions that haven't been answered. So if you'd wait till the end to do your Q&A, that would be wonderful. All right, we've just topped 100 participants. So I think that's a good enough number to go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here this evening. My name is Gary Moeller. I'm the principal here at Liberty Middle School. I've lost track. This is either my 4th or 5th year. It's been a strange year, so I honestly don't remember. This is my 25th year working in the Camas School District, and I'll introduce my my friends here.
Hello, I'm Steve Baranowski. I get to be an associate principal here at Liberty. I think this is year number 8 for me in a variety of roles. Love to serve as associate here at Liberty.
Hi, and I'm also another associate, Mandy Busby, and this is my 3rd year at Liberty, and I think it's my 13th year in Camas.
All right, so you can see again our objectives for today. You know, mainly we're going to try to answer the most burning questions that you have, give you a little bit of you know, set some of you at ease, so you know a little bit of information. And then, you know, there are topics we're going to briefly talk about, but they, like grading, for example, that in itself is going to require like more time than we have today. So we'll follow up in the near future with additional videos and meetings to talk to you about some of these things. But we're going to look at the big picture mostly today. Again, we've got about 30 minutes today. We only have 4 webinar licenses for the district, so we're all kind of sharing them tonight. And so my time is based upon when the other meetings are going to start. And so my 15-minute presentation will probably last about 25. And that's just the way it goes because there's no way to cover this much information that quick. And those of you just joining us, again, if you could hold your questions, there's a Q&A button that you can access mobile on your mobile device. If you can just tap your screen, it'll show up in the bottom. If you would hold off on answering your questions, it will help us answer them more promptly or more efficiently in the end. when they, you know, because some of them will get answered as we go. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so some logistics, I just covered some of those. When you ask a question, the question only shows up for us, but once we answer it, it'll show who asked the question. If we do it verbally, if some of the answers can be, we'll answer either to everybody or directly back to you through the Q&A. So I just wanted to let you know that your question may not be anonymous. Just thought some of you might want to know that. You are all muted. You cannot unmute yourself, and we cannot see you. So you don't need to worry about any of those things like you might worry about. All right, so moving on. So distance learning 2.0, we want to kind of take a moment and differentiate it from what it was at the end of last year to what we're planning for to start the 2020 school year. So as you all know, we kind of got thrust into this with very little notice. And all things considered, I think we did a pretty good job of quickly putting together a plan to serve students for the remainder of the year. And again, at first we thought it would only be a few weeks. And certainly we know it wasn't perfect. We learned a lot of things. We heard a lot of great feedback from parents and students. And then we also, saw things on our own and we're like, okay, if we have to do this again, we'll do this a little bit differently. So some of those things we've been working on over the summer with professional learning for staff. So they've been, working on what does on-demand learning look like? And we're going to define these terms for you as we go. You might see on-demand also referred to as asynchronous. This would be when it's not a direct one-on-one conversation with a teacher, but more maybe looking at a video or accessing things on your own time. We're going to spend some time looking at social emotional learning. Teachers have been preparing for that. So how to support your students through this kind of challenging time, especially when it comes to middle school. We've been looking at universal design for learning, which is a way we can meet all students' needs within the classroom. And also working on video creation tools, making sure that we can provide the most engaging lessons for students as we can. We've also learned a lot about communication, and our teachers at Liberty did a great job communicating, which is almost a problem. Like too much communication can be overwhelming. I personally, my wife handled all the communication for my daughter because I did not have the capacity to keep up on that. So we know communication is an issue, and so we're working on streamlining. That's our Parent Square app we'll talk about in a minute, is really designed to make communication much easier to track and easier to just stay in the know. And it's just some other things, and we're going to move on because I'm already going to run out of time. So one of the things that we're going to need kids and parents to get familiar with, of course, is how to access the technology. And we want parents to learn how to use these things as well so that they can more easily support their students. And so it's not daunting, and it's an efficient process. So really there's 4 main programs that we need people to become familiar with. The first is Google Classroom. And this is, for those of you who are not new to us, Google Classroom is the delivery device that we use to really communicate with our students. It is how we present all of the just the hands-on materials that kids would need. It's pushing out assignments and things like that. So that is our main communication device for classrooms. Zoom, of course, is what we're using right now, and this is our main video conferencing tool, and this is how we'll meet with our students, both in a large group and in smaller group settings, one-on-one possibly. Parent Square is, again, that communication tool we talked about in a little bit. And then Skyward, for those of you, again, new to middle school, Skyward used to play a much bigger role, and it'll still play a decent role in what we do. But this is our grading and attendance portal. And so you can log on as a parent and see your kid's attendance and what their grades are and things like that. So we will still be using that. It's just not going to be maybe the main tool to stay abreast of what's going on in the classroom. And again, we'll have video tutorials on all of these, as well as offer one-on-one tutoring for any parent who wants it. It's important that you guys not feel intimidated by this software and that you feel confident in its use. And that's what our goal is. All right, so this is kind of the big question on everybody's mind, we assume, which is what the heck is my kid's day going to look like? So I've got a 6th grade schedule pulled up here. The 7th and 8th will follow the same basic structure. So we'll spend more time on the 6th grade and then just quickly show you the 7th and 8th. So our schedule is broken up into a couple of parts. So the first thing I want to point out to you is at the beginning of the day, we've got about a 30-minute time period, which really is designed for getting the kids ready for school, making sure breakfast is taken care of. We have Roaring News, which is our school news broadcast, and we use that for a variety of purposes to communicate it with everyone about what's going on for the day, to promote fun things going on, we've had some little contests, and we'll also use that to send out information about common social emotional learning lessons and other things that we're gonna want the students to do. You'll notice we have brain breaks and a 40-minute lunch and more brain breaks throughout the day. So let's talk about the main piece. So I want you to focus on the orangish colored blocks. So you'll notice on a typical Monday, I've got period 1 core class live, and I've got period 1 on demand. And we'll talk a little bit more about live and on demand in a little bit. Our goal in creating the schedule was we had to meet the state needs, of course, for how much teaching time is required by the state. But we also really were looking at how can we make this as user-friendly for parents and students so it's not overwhelming, so they don't have to worry about 5 or 6 classes a day. And so what we came up with was this schedule. So really on Monday, they're going to focus on their odd core class. So this might be their math class. So they might start with a live lesson. This would be much like just showing up for class at school. They would be take attendance. They'll use this for question and answers, for checking on social emotional, how's everybody doing, class discussions, all the typical things you would do in a classroom. And then we have this on-demand piece, and this is where it gets a little bit different. We're going to view this live time as valuable. It's very valuable, and we don't want to use it in a way that, like, we can use the on-demand more efficiently. And what I mean by that is if I need to give a lecture or really spend a few minutes explaining a new concept to students, this is something I can do offline and make a video of it. And then I can post that video for the kids to watch on their own. They can pause it, they can come back to it. So there's 2 components of these, of each of these core classes. So we've got math, and then we've got lunchtime for 6th graders. And then we have our elective in the middle of the day. And I want to spend a quick moment on this. At Liberty, we do an every other day with our electives normally in a normal situation. So a kid might have their, like, say, band class on Monday, and then they'd have a health fitness class on Tuesday, and then go back to band, etc. So what we decided to do is to really streamline things so they don't have to worry about 2 of those classes, just 1. So on the kids' schedule, when they get it, it'll show a period 3 and a period 4 at 6th grade. And so the period 3 might be their band class, and period 4 would be their health class. We're going to start the first 6 weeks of the school year with period 3 only. So they're going to have band each day, and as an example again, and that'll go on for 6 weeks. And then their 6 weeks will switch, and then they'll have health for 6 weeks. Some kids will start with health instead and then rotate to their elective. So that way they don't have to worry about both at the same time. And then you'll see in the afternoon that they have period 5 again. So they only have 3 classes to worry about on each day. You'll see on Tuesday, we just rotate, and now we go to period 2 for a live and then an on-demand. So that would maybe be their science class. And then they would, again, rotate on Thursday and Friday. You'll notice Wednesday is on demand each of these days, or each of these periods. And this is time that, again, will be used, provides flexibility for the students on when they are going to interact with that information. It doesn't necessarily have to be at 9:30 in the day or in the morning. What this also will do is provide during this on-demand time for the teacher to work in small groups with kids, so they can do one-on-one conferencing during this time. This is when we're going to do interventions and things like that. And also slightly down the road, once we've satisfied the state requirements to be allowed to do so, this would also be a day where we'd have kids in small groups come into the building, and then they could work with teachers in small setting. So a lot of flexibility happening on Wednesday to be able to meet the students' needs. All right. We know you're probably gonna have more questions about schedules. We will again provide a frequently asked questions at the end of this that we'll post out onto our website and through Parent Square. And so we will cover this in more detail in the weeks to come before school starts. Real quick, you can see 7th grade, it's much the same. The only difference is the electives at the end of the day for 7th grade. All the times and all the things we talked about stay the same. And then 8th grade is their elective period is in the morning. Other than that, the same structure holds. All right, we've already spoken about these a little bit, so let's take a look at what a live class is and what on-demand class is. Up until recently, we were calling live classes synchronous classes. Again, we're in sync, we're together, we're communicating. And then on-demand, we were calling asynchronous classes. So we wanted to get some more student-friendly language in here. So what is a live class? It's teacher-led. It is the discussion in the classroom. It is shared real-time experience. This is how we're going to build relationships with kids. Most of teaching, a good part of teaching is developing a relationship with students so that they know and trust the staff that are leading them. And that just doesn't happen very well if it's a recorded video. So this is the time where you get to interact both with teacher and with other students. We have small breakout groups. And this, of course, will be using Zoom. When we're talking on-demand classes, and again, more details to come, this is just the bird's eye view. Again, an on-demand class could look like, I, as a teacher, have put out a video, and I've asked you to watch the first 3 minutes of it, and then pause, and then practice some math problems, and then start the video again to check to see if you got the answers right. So it's that practice time that students can do independently, and then the next live class, it might be then discussing the results of those activities and those assignments. So there's a lot of flexibility in what those could look like. We just want to make sure you kind of get an idea of what we've created for the students. All right, we're going to move on to just a brief glimpse of, just another look at a day in the life of a student. We really want students and parents, as best that their situation will allow, and we know that that's a big ask for some families, is treat the school day as a normal school day. We know that some families and kids, for a lot of reasons, just were not able to navigate online learning in the spring, and we found some kids who were just like, cool, like it's an extended snow day, right, and didn't think that school really was continuing. And so it's important that we develop structure and routine for our students. And so we want them to get up, get ready for school, get dressed as if you're going to school, and then check in the morning, and then start to go through their day, again, treating this just like they would if they were in-person learning. Our expectation and hope is that everything that we've given the kids to work on can, I don't want to use the word easily, but I kind of do, but easily be completed within the structure of a school day, and so that the evenings, they wouldn't have any school responsibilities. Again, some of those on-demand responsibilities in classes that have some flexibility. So a kid could, if it works out for them and their family, delay some of those activities until the evening if they wanted to. Certainly it'll be important to complete those on-demand activities before your next live class, because it could have, that live class is probably going to be directly tied into some of those activities. All right, so now it's just some various other things that we know that you're curious about. Again, grading and attendance each deserve their own 30-minute web training here. So we're going to go through this pretty quick, and just know that we'll have more information to come. At the middle schools in Camas, we're all going to be using a standards-based grading system, which will be familiar to families coming out of elementary school. We are going to have a modified scale. We're not going to use numbers. We're going to use letters, and you can see the letters that we are proposing and what they mean. Students who meet or exceed standard will get an M. Progressing towards standard, some people might look at this as a negative, and we need to really educate people to be, some of the standards that kids are working on, especially like in writing, it's based on where we want the kids to be at the end of the year. We wouldn't expect a sixth grader coming into sixth grade to meet or exceed the standard from day one. This is something they're going to progress towards. So this basically means you're on track and you're moving forward. As the year goes on, below standard would mean that we're not really progressing as we should, and we need to get some extra support. And then insufficient evidence, this will be used when kids are just not giving us enough information to make a determination about where they stand with the learning. Attendance, I'm not going to spend very much time on because that's still something that's being finalized. We are going to be required to report daily attendance. Last year it was weekly attendance. And so we'll be reporting daily attendance, which will come from, kids participating in their live sessions, and then also probably through some daily check-ins using like a form, quickly say, yes, I'm here and ready for learning for the day. I want to talk, and again, no, that's not enough information for you. We will have it for you by the time school starts. Talk real briefly about some orientation activities. For sixth grade, there are 2 activities. First is on the 26th. Information was sent home with Parent Square, I think yesterday, talking about this virtual web orientation. And this is an opportunity for our sixth graders to get to know some 8th grade mentors and go through some activities to get them comfortable with middle school. And then on the first day of school, which is September 1st, our sixth graders are going to be invited to come to school and have a modified version of an in-person orientation. This is where they can pick up their materials, they can meet some staff, meet their teachers, get information that they need to be successful. Possibly we're working on, might be able to pick up a Chromebook if you haven't already been able to do that. Please note that Chromebooks for new students and those who haven't yet swapped out the old ones that we used last year, that's happening on the 26th also of August, and information was sent home in Parent Square, I believe, yesterday as well. So make sure you go check that out if you haven't swapped out your Chromebook. Then on the second day of school is when the 7th graders would come in and repeat that process, and the 8th graders will come on September 3rd. And while for example, the 6th and 7th graders are doing that, the 8th graders will be following their virtual schedule. And so they won't wait till the 3rd to start school. They'll be virtual for the 1st and 2nd day and then go to their orientation on the 3rd day. More information will come, I promise. All right, so what can I do to support my students' learning? As you know that, you are very important in normal circumstances in your child's education. And we realized that many of you are taking on a much larger role, and that's going to be difficult. And we recognize that, and we're here to help you as much as we possibly can. So one of the biggest things is really get in, and this statement came from a student last year. Like we need to understand that school, it's not a building. Like a building is a building, it's a school building, but school is an idea about learning. So we still have school, and the opportunities for learning are there. They're just different. And we need to make sure that we model that for our kids. We know many of you are frustrated. We're all frustrated. We'd rather have the kids here. We need to do our best to keep that frustration from the kids so that they don't see it that way as best that we can. I want to talk real quick about making sure you have supplies. We're not really worried about school supplies this year. Like normally there's a big list of things, and really all we're hoping the kids have is adequate notebooks and paper and pens and pencils, and maybe some other organizational things that'll work in your home. Kids who have like an art class will likely be required to maybe get some paints, some like watercolors or colored pencils and things like that. So there may be a few little things that you'll need to purchase, but we're not going to worry about the big supply list. Be involved with the communication. I know it's tough. We heard from some parents who are like, I just started deleting everything because I couldn't keep up. And certainly I understand that feeling. but the same, working with a parent, he was both upset with all the communication and upset that he didn't know anything, and he admitted that he just deleted everything. So we're going to work on our communication, make sure it's streamlined, and we need you guys to make sure that you check that communication so that we can help guide each other. Also, please feedback to us. We also hear that sometimes we don't hear from parents until they're really upset about something, and like once you first feel that little frustration of I don't know how to do this, this is too much, just reach out to us and we will support you. That is what we're here for. Get familiar with the Big Four. We'll have some training videos out so you can familiarize yourself. And then one big thing that we're doing this year is every Friday we're going to have, and we're still designing it, but there will be a weekly guide for you and your student to know exactly what to expect the next week, know what all the links are, know where they need to be and what they need to accomplish. And we'll have that uniform across all grade levels so that it's easy to follow and you won't get lost, because we know it's very easy to do. Some quick additional topics. We have some highly capable students designated here at Liberty, as all schools do, and we'll be serving those students as we have for the past few years in a cluster model. And so students will be spread out over a number of classes, and teachers will be using their universally designed instruction to make sure we meet the needs of all groups. Students, this is a big question that we are hearing from some families, or how are we going to meet the needs of my kid who has an individual education plan or a 504, or just my kid isn't getting it done, how can you help us? And so again, this is one of the ways that we're hoping to use Wednesday to get kids into the building to support them while they're doing their virtual on the other days. So you should be getting information soon from the case managers with more information about how we're going to help your kids be successful. And then finally on this slide, we have advanced math. We changed the way we do mathematics here in Camas School District. And so we have an opportunity for 7th graders to do advanced mathematics. And that is going to be done through, all students will take 7th grade mathematics, and then they'll have the option of signing up for sort of a 0 period. It'll actually happen after that published day, right around 3:10. And students will be able to take an advanced math class for 8th grade so that they can be ready for algebra the next year. And again, more information was sent home about that earlier in the spring. And if you would like more information about that, please feel free to contact me directly and I can get that information to you. If we know about you and your kids signed up, there's about 40 students who signed up. We actually have a message coming out to you tomorrow with more information. All right, so I'm actually, believe it or not, I don't really feel like I said hardly enough, but I'm over 10 minutes over my time. So we have some time still for questions and answers. So now would be the time to go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A. And then we'll do a moderated answer session for some of the questions. We won't get to all of them, but we'll follow up with a frequently asked question document within the next day or so. Also, please try to ask questions that you think will be relevant to more than just yourself. For example, please don't ask about like IEP questions and things like that. You can email those directly to me and then we can get those answered for you. All right, so I'll stop talking for a minute and see if we have some questions.
We do, Mr. Mull. First one would be asking about why live instruction is first before on demand.
I am messing with the video real quick and I apologize. I did not fully hear the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Someone was wondering why live instruction is first before on demand in the schedule.
Well, it can be used kind of interchangeably. And the way we've written the schedule is our hope is that, within a few, once everybody gets comfortable with the schedule and all the technology, that we can kind of use those a little bit more interchangeably, which is sort of the beauty of how we've scheduled things for Liberty. We've got that, I'll say 2 hours, it's not quite 2 hour block of time where we have synchronous and then asynchronous. So that's a time that eventually we hope to be able to use a little more flexibly. And the other thing just to remember is that, we'll start, when you look at the first day of school, like it will start rotating, right? So you'll have an asynchronous activity, an on-demand activity, but then the next time there'll be those questions and things can be discussed at that next live activity. So we'll get into a rotation that it should work out okay.
We have another schedule question, just wanting to recap the first week of school with the orientation day. What do the other 2 days look like for students?
Yeah, we'll send out something a little more easy to follow than just talking at it. But essentially, if I'm a sixth grader, the first day of school, I'll be showing up for my orientation day. And then essentially the next 2 days that week, is only 3 days in the first week of school, would be one day would be like the odd day, and then the other day would be the even day. So we'd have 1 day of orientation, and then it's kind of like a Monday and a Tuesday day, the odd day and the even day. And that would be true of all of the 3 grades, just where that orientation day will dictate when the odd and when the even is.
And another question on schedules, when will those be available for students?
Great question. Optimistically, I'm hoping to have everything into the system by Wednesday or Thursday of next week. And then we'll be able to, once that happens, they'll be available through Skyward. And so if you are a returning Liberty parent, you should probably be familiar with how to log into Skyward. If not, we will send home information. So that's one way. And then another way is we're hoping to be able to just email those out to families as well.
And another person is wondering what band and choir looks like.
We're going to let Steven handle this one. He's kind of more the elective man.
Yeah, so our band and choir teachers have been hard at work to design some really great stuff for your students around the areas of band and choir. And so at sixth grade, typically you get instruments right when you start the year. We're going to delay that a little bit and really get into music theory and appreciation to start the year. But at seventh and eighth grade, there are going to be instruments in kids' hands sooner in the year than for sixth grade. But either way, there's going to be great opportunities to engage with music in choir or in band classes.
Mr. Moeller, I guess, can you recap Wednesday and just the instruction, what it looks like for a student?
Yeah, from a student's point of view, I probably should have not stopped sharing my screen, but I'll mess things up if I try to get back to it. Essentially on Wednesday, if you notice, it was the on-demand for each period that day. And so teachers will have activities. I, as a former math teacher, would likely have a few videos for my kids to watch and then practice those skills. That kind of thing would be happening. But at the same time, during any of the on-demand times, whether it's Wednesday or any of the other days, teachers will be available. And so if I'm a student that's struggling, I could ask for, hey, Wednesday, tomorrow during second period, can you join me and help me through this? And the teacher will be available to do that. So that's part of what will be happening on Wednesday. And again, other things that will be happening is we're hoping to be able to bring students in the building in small groups when we're allowed to do so, and then they can get some one-on-one instruction and that sort of thing. So it's just it's a full day of education. It's just not going to be in a Zoom one-on-one group setting. It'll be more of a do these activities, practice these assignments, write the essay, those kinds of activities.
Mr. Baranowski, can you go ahead and answer how students can access their Google Classroom and videos that will explain this?
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to send out videos that explain exactly how to log in and use a course code to get added to Google Classrooms. Teachers will also send invitations for students who are assigned to them to enroll in those classes. One other question I saw on the list was about trying to access it from a parent perspective. Honestly, something we learned last year is the best way for a parent to see the most information in Google Classroom is to log in as the student themselves. So on your computer or device, if you log in as your actual student, you'll be able to see more of what they're working on and the assignments that are posted. So we encourage you to get your students log on as if you were them on your own device.
Mr. Baranowski, you can go ahead and continue answering some questions about extracurricular activities such as sports.
Yeah, so when it comes to sports specifically, we are under WIAA guidance, and WIAA decided that they postponed all seasons till after January 1st right now. And so right now we're really hoping to have sports this season. We're hoping we're back with some students on campus and can continue to offer all of our athletic offerings in condensed seasons later on this year. Other activities, if we have opportunities to do them from a distance version, I know our Science Olympiad Club is already thinking of ways to do that. We're going to try to engage students in any and every way we can, simply because we know they need it and we want them to be active and involved. And so we're going to get creative this year. We hope that some students will join us in those endeavors.
Mr. Mueller, we have some questions about when we would resume full-time school.
Well, that is the million-dollar question. We're receiving guidance from the state and from the health department, and this is a decision that's made not only at the district level, but all of the districts in Clark County are aligned in when they'll open. This is not a question I unfortunately can answer. There are some specific guidelines of what has to happen within our community before we can open our schools, and so that's why it's very important that we all do our parts and we make sure we follow the recommendations and guidelines, because we need our numbers in our community to go down, and as soon as they go down, we'll get them in the building, and that's just the reality of where we're at. Without a safer environment, we're not permitted to really bring them in.
Mr. Baranowski, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about orientation and the materials that students will be getting?
Yeah, so what we're going to have on 6th grade, we actually have that web orientation. That's going to be all virtual. That's on August 26th. But those pickup days that are going to be the first, second, and third days of school, depending on the grade level, that's just going to be a chance for students to come into the building, get supplies from teachers. We're going to have assigned times. That way, only one student per minute is coming into our building. We make sure we're following all social distancing protocols within that. A chance for them to see teachers, grab what they need, and they're really in and out within 15 minutes. And so it's just a way, it's a supply pickup more than an orientation in that sense, a way for them to just come and get what they need on that day.
I think a little more detail on standards-based grading and the more information to come on that would be good, Mr. Mueller.
I'll answer a little bit. Again, this is one of those topics that we'll spend some time on a little bit later. So with standards-based grading, really what we're doing is we're measuring kids based on what they know, not necessarily just how well they can jump through the hoops of school. So for example, it's pretty common to often give points to kids for just turning in an assignment. But that doesn't really give us any information about whether or not they know what's on that assignment, right? And so, and also another part of a traditional grading system is often very assessment heavy, very much like a big obtrusive test. There's the unit test, and if a kid does really well, then they're set up for a good grade. If they do really poor on a test, then they're stuck in a hole. One of the great things about standards-based grading is that it's really looking at more on where you end up in your learning versus your journey to get there. So if I'm a student, let's say I've got to memorize the 50 states in the country, and I'm off to a bad start. And the first couple of quizzes, I just can't get more than Texas. But by the end, I know all 50 of them. Do we really want to hold the kids and penalize them for the fact that they couldn't memorize quite as fast as their peers, if at the end they obtained the learning that we needed them to? So that is one of the kind of just a quick example of kind of a standards-based grading philosophy versus a traditional grading system where you're earning points and did you get enough points to pass. It's more about demonstrating your learning.
One question about students being required to have their cameras on for Zoom.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's arguments to be made that, we want you to have your cameras on so that we can interact, and but then we also understand that there are a lot of reasons why students or families may not want cameras on. And so we will not have any language or directive that like requires or forces a kid to have their camera on. It's encouraged for sure, because even though we're doing things virtually and it makes it harder to develop a relationship, it's even harder if we can't see each other. So, which is tough because like right now I can't see your faces, and this is a harder presentation than if I could actually see how you're reacting to me, and things like that. So highly encouraged. One of the great things about Zoom versus what we used last year, which was Google Meets, Zoom kids will be able to put a background. And so if you're in a situation where you maybe don't have the best background, you can put a virtual background and make it look like you're anywhere. So highly encouraged. If families or kids are like, absolutely not, that's not going to happen, then that's fine. Certainly like to talk to you about it, see what we can do to mitigate your concern. Yeah. We have about another minute, so one more good question, and then we'll have to shut this down because the next webinar needs our license.
I guess our last question would be maybe just define the instructional hours throughout the day a little bit more.
Again, I regret now closing down my presentation. The instructional hours, the guided hours are going to happen between the hours of 9:30 and 3:20, 3:10. You'll notice again within that, though, there are periods where it's on demand in the middle. So for example, again, a kid goes to a live meeting at 9:30, and then right after that, there's the asynchronous time, the on-demand time for that class. Kid may choose to wait till the evening to do that, and that is perfectly fine. And so the day has some structure to it. We have these live times at these specific times on the calendar or on the day, but then we also have some flexibility where kids can make some choices and families can make some choices for themselves. All right, I know you have lots more questions. Please feel free to email us directly. You can find our email addresses on our website, and you can call us and we will get back to you. And again, look for frequently asked questions to be showing up in your parent square pretty soon, as well as a video recording from this morning, which I'll be perfectly honest, I was a lot less awkward in. And so you might enjoy that one more than this one. So you have 2 videos you can choose to watch, and then we'll have a frequently asked question answering everybody's questions. And look for more guidance on things like grading and attendance in the weeks to come. And with that, I want to thank you and wish you a happy evening. And Gail, you can have your license now. Thanks, everybody.